Such an honor to be here today with Helen Hernández. On today's episode of Perfiles, you're going to get to meet this lovely lady, but she's also a trailblazer. Somebody who has been an advocate for Latinos in Hollywood, in film and Hollywood and television, and also in media. What an honor it is.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for reaching out and asking me to be a part of your program.
You know, I know that you have done an amazing job trying to portray Latinos in a positive light, recognizing and celebrating their accomplishments, either in front of cameras and behind the cameras. It's entertainers, directors, writers in film, in television, and also streaming. And this year, you're going to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Imagen Awards.
Yes.
Wow. Well, it's been a lot of work, a lot of hard work, a lot of persistence.
Blood, sweat, and tears, yes, along the way.
How did it all start for you?
Well, I worked for Norman Lear in 1980 when the company was still Tandem TAT. And then he joined up with Jerry Perenchio as a partner, and they founded and bought Embassy Studios. So then they combined Tandem TAT and Embassy into one company, which was known as Embassy Communications. And it was all part of different facets of television, in addition to a film in addition to television. And
there you started working with Norman Lear. You were in kind of a community affairs role. What was your role initially?
No, my role was really public affairs. It was really more mainstream public affairs, issue-oriented. Part of my job there was to go out into the community and get an idea of what the critical issues were at the time. And then I would get that information, take it back to all the writers on all of our shows, and encourage them to include them in storylines to kind of bring a higher profile to issues that were affecting, you know, our citizens in our country.
Now let us rewind a little bit more. You started, you also worked at a union. So when I read that on your bio, I was like, oh, wow. And your family also was involved with the community. What inspires you to, fight for worker rights and now fight for positive portrayal of Latinos in Hollywood?
Well, it really, I think, started all when I was young. I'm one of 12 children, and I was raised in Azusa, California. And my grandfather was Pancho Villa's chauffeur, and he was an amazing human being, and he always was out in the community, and if anybody needed any help, and he had 25 cents in his pocket and they needed it more than he did, he would give it. And that was kind of, my grandfather. And then my father moved from El Paso, Texas, to Azusa in 1941. And in 1950, he ran for city council in Azusa. I might add, first Mexican-American city councilman before Ed Roybal. Ed Roybal was in LA, even though my father was in Azusa, a small town, but he was still a Mexican-American, and he had been elected as city council member. And was always involved in community activities, groups, and so forth. So I kind of grew up with that. And my mom and dad were involved in politics. And in 1962, they had opened, the Democratic Party had opened a Kennedy for President campaign office a block away from where we lived. So I used to go over there and work in the office, licking stamps and so forth. And that was kind of my first foray into politics and making a difference.
And organizing.
And my, I was the oldest daughter of the 12, so I was always having to take care of my younger brothers and sisters. I had 3 older brothers, so everything else fell on me. So you could say I became an organizer as a young girl.
Influential.
Well, and then when I was 16, I had an opportunity to get involved with the Danny Thomas Teenage March on Leukemia, and actually had a chance to meet Danny Thomas. And I was a Southern California chair for the Teenage March on Leukemia, and I organized events and activities. And in those days, teens were going door to door soliciting funds for St. Jude's Hospital. Okay. And again, I enjoyed that, making a difference in a community. That's it really all my life. I feel that that's what I've done, and that's what I've enjoyed doing.
Now, how do you make the transition, or how do you break into the entertainment industry?
Well, I was working temporarily for a union in Huntington Park, United Furniture Workers of America. And while I was there, and this was 1976, and it was at a time when George Meany issued an order for all international unions to hire more women on international staff. Okay. And so the office I happened to be working at was the office of an international vice president for this union. Okay. And I was sitting there, and it was just temporary work. And he said, I just got a call from our international president. They need to hire more women. And I thought, if you were interested, we'd offer you a job. I said, sure, what do I do? And he said, don't worry about it.
Right.
We'll send you to school. School happened to be the George Meany Labor Study Center in Washington, D.C. So I was actually there the week that Jimmy Carter was elected president. And so I spent, 5 years working for labor union. And I happened to meet someone in 1980 that worked for Norman Lear. Mm-hmm. And she said, I'm moving out of the public affairs area and moving into the creative area, and I was asked to find my replacement. She said, so I think you'd be great. I'd like you to apply for the job. And I said, no, I don't even watch television. I mean, I'm always, siempre ando en la calle, always out organizing people and trying to get, people to join the union and so forth. And she said, no. We want somebody that has their pulse on the community. Wow. And so she said, I have to tell you, there are several other candidates, but I think you'd be good and I could support you. Oh, so I applied for the job. I went through 4 interviews, and my last interview was with Alan Horn, who was later, as you know, co-chairman of the Walt Disney Company. Wow. And he was the one that actually said, you're hired, and that was it. And I immediately, after he said I was hired, I walked outside and my knees buckled, and I said, oh my God, what did I do?
What did I get myself into?
I mean, I'm in over my head, and I started crying, and it was like, I called my mentor, and I said, can you believe it? I don't know what to do. He said, no, you're qualified. You have to remember that you're qualified. So don't think twice. I mean, they wouldn't have, offered you the position if they didn't think you were qualified. So anyway.
That's amazing. So how important it is to have mentors in somebody's career who's barely starting, and this interviews, I want to inspire also audiences.
Oh yeah, I think mentors from the beginning to understand that people that impact your lives are your mentors.
And how important it is to have mentors.
Well, and I think one of the most important things to understand is that mentors touch your life from the very beginning. I remember that I had a teacher in the 7th grade, Mr. Vindiola, who really impressed upon me the importance and value of current affairs. So, I mean, that, from a political perspective, you kind of start looking at, oh, this is something that I'm interested in, And then later on, I remember my speech teacher in high school, who was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And she really inspired me to be able to present, stand up and speak. And then later on, I met, Cesar Chavez, and Cesar was one. We have a
photo of him. There he is. We do.
So Cesar inspired me because he also, said, as Norman did later too, one person can make a difference. Yeah. And then later on, I mean, when I was with the unions, I had, a friend of mine who actually I'm married to now.
Oh wow! Okay.
Years later, we wound up, nice. Getting married. Who believed in me and actually saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And he was always lifting me up and saying, no, you're good at what you do. Know that. Don't ever let anybody put you down. So that kind of propped me up. And then one of I think the most important times, and again, my engaging with Norman when I first met him, and how warm he was, and how he embraced me for being a Latina, nice. And he was actually at the time on the MALDEF board of directors and asked me to be his surrogate to that board when I first started working with him. And we came down this path in terms of him supporting and understanding the importance and value of the Latino community. And it was when I was with Norman that I I was on an ad hoc committee for a group at the time that was the National Conference of Christians and Jews, who were looking for a way to impact media portrayals, print and television portrayals of Latinos. So they asked me if I would set up a meeting with Norman to discuss this. And I did, and at the meeting Norman said, you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. I would encourage you to start an awards program, and if you decide to do that, I will provide the staff person and the money to make it happen, and that's how it was born. So I was there when it was born, and I'm still with it now.
And you're still here. 40 years is going to be in August, and it's going to be celebrated at the Plaza de Arte y Culturas in the heart of Los Angeles again?
No. It's going to, this year we're going to the Beverly Hilton Hotel.
Oh, you're going to return to the Beverly Hilton.
Which is where we used to go.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's like a coming home, so to speak. It was during the pandemic. People didn't want to really be in rooms, in hotel rooms, and felt more comfortably being outside. So that's why we've done it the last several years there. But I think one of the things I do want to mention, we're still talking about mentors. It's very important. Meeting someone and staying in touch and creating a relationship. You don't just go up to somebody and say, I want you to be my mentor. You have to say, can I talk to you? Can I seek your advice? Develop the relationship. It's really important to develop the relationship that will then morph into being a mentor. I think that's really, really important. I've had some wonderful mentors, as I said, with Cesar and Dolores Huerta, who Cesar introduced me to Dolores. He came to speak to some workers that I was organizing, and he brought her with him, and he said, somehow I thought the two of you should meet. That was in 1978, and we've been good friends ever since.
She heroes. I actually worked briefly with Dolores Huerta during the midterm elections. This is in 2010. When Jerry Brown and worked with Hilda Solis and Marilena Durazo. So you're talking about all these big figures in the labor movement, and that to do that, what you did with defending worker rights, it comes from your heart. And what do we expect on this 40th anniversary?
Well, I think what people, we're talking about a generation, because where we were in 1985 when we started this to where we are today, some kids that are now in front of the camera or behind the camera weren't even born. So we're talking about a generation of what's transpired in the last generation. When you look at when we had that first awards program, we really struggled to find somebody or something to
categories.
Honor.
How many categories?
We had no categories in those days. Categories came much later. But the whole point was that we struggled. We had to do something. So we did come up with, a couple of awards that we gave. And then 2 years, I think of the third Imagen Awards, David Picker, who was our co-chair, our entertainment co-chair for that luncheon, actually, with the committee, couldn't find anybody to honor, so he gave a scathing report to the industry saying, you need to pay attention to this community, and you have neglected this community, and to the point that we could not even find one show entity to even give an award to. So that was coming from one of their own, David Picker, whose family was the Picker Vanoff Studios, which is now the Sunset Studios down on Gower and Sunset, and there were significant figures in the entertainment industry. So when you look at that, where we were then, where we are today, it was about, I want to say maybe 15 years ago that we started the entries, and where we maybe had 50 the first year. Now last year we had 435.
Because now you have movie studios, networks, TV networks, streaming platforms, everything has evolved.
Right.
So I don't know, how many categories are you planning to have this year?
I think there's 27.
27.
Yeah, and but the whole point is that you will hear this generation say, we haven't done enough. But where I'm sitting, I'm looking at where we were 40 years ago and where we are today. You can see the trajectory of how it has increased, and how we have producers and directors, and we have writers, and we have people in front of the camera, maybe in primary roles and secondary roles. We are there. Having said that, we're not where we should be, but we are definitely there. And given the population numbers and where we're projected to be by the census in 2040, it's by osmosis. The numbers are there. We'll be involved. I mean, it's going to happen.
What do we need to do as a community? If we work in media, if we work in, behind the scenes, or we work as an executive and we participate in these meetings where they make decisions, what do we need to do?
I think, first of all, you have to be part of the entertainment community. I mean, you have to make sure that you're engaged in the mainstream media, because that's where the power is. I mean, being part of that dynamic. And when you're there, if you were working from a film studio, get involved with the Academy, Motion Picture Academy. If you're working for a television studio or a production company, join the TV Academy. You've got to get involved and break in, and so that you can then begin to affect change. You cannot affect change from the outside. We can complain all we want, but unless we're on the inside where the decisions are made, nothing is going to change. And when you look at Chris Abrego, who is the CEO of Endemol Shine, he's now the chairman of the Television Academy. I mean, unheard of. Or you look at when Nina Tasler was the president of CBS Entertainment. She had more Latino senior executives than any other person in the entertainment industry. And once she left CEO of CBS Entertainment, those numbers are gone.
Wow.
And then one other person that I need to mention that people don't really think about is Tichi Wilkerson Cassell. And I don't know if you know who she is.
No.
Okay.
Nina, I am familiar, but not her.
Okay. Tichi Wilkerson Cassell was the owner of The Hollywood Reporter.
Oh, wow.
She was from Sonora, Mexico.
Yo soy de Sonora.
She and her mother worked for William Wilkerson, who was the owner of The Hollywood Reporter, and he fell in love with her. And they got married. I think it was a 25 or 30 years.
Interesting. I've never heard of the story.
Yeah. Age difference. She also hired more Mexicanos than anybody else in the entertainment industry that worked at The Hollywood Reporter. Most of the staff there.
I didn't know this story.
Most of the people at The Hollywood Reporter in the day were bilingual.
Wow.
And I knew Tichi, through Norman. And we connected when she found out I was a Mexicana,
Mexican-American.
Working, with Norman, and we had lunch and we got together, and I got her involved in some community events and things that she loved because she had never done that before. And at one point I was running her foundation, the Wilkerson Foundation.
Wow.
So
you've done everything, and I know you probably had very important leadership roles in many boards too.
Well, I've been on a few boards,
and a lot of recognitions.
Well, okay.
Which one are you more proud of? I mean, there's so many. I see the little button that you have here. That was given by Mexico president?
By the Consul General here in Los Angeles, but it had been approved by the Mexican government. And it's basically an Aztec warrior cutting the grass. And it's kind of plowing the field for cooperation between Mexican Americans and Mexico, because that's our connection to our homeland, Mexico. So I'm very, very proud of that.
Wow.
I'm very proud of the fact that I was also on the National Board of PBS, which I think public broadcasting is extremely critical to our country, and also critical to make sure that our programming about our community is impacted. Wow. So I like to think that I have helped
you have
make
contributed
a difference.
Immensely. You've done an amazing job, contributing to mainstream, elevating Latinos. All these executives that work in mainstream, in movie studios and TV networks and streaming platforms. What are the qualifications for anybody who would like to make this list?
Well, when we, about 14 years ago, we saw what we were doing with the Imagen Awards and impacting, our creatives in front of and behind the camera. But then we thought, well, what about these executives? And how many are there? And how can we encourage these studios, networks, streaming platforms now to hire more, Latinos in, at their companies? So we decided to create the Imagen Influentials list.
Coveted Imagen Influentials list.
I'm sorry?
It's a coveted influentials
Coveted,
list.
well, yeah, I guess
it is.
now it is. Now it's a coveted. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
You always wonder whether or not you're making an impact.
They are. Yeah,
but
do.
anyway, the whole idea was we've lifted up the talent. Now let's lift up the executives. Because one thing about the entertainment industry I know is that they love to be recognized. You know, whether it's through the Imagen Awards or a certificate as an influential, companies like to say, oh, this is what we've done for the Latino community.
Award-winning.
Exactly. So, you know, with the influentials, we put out a call to the studios and companies and to our network and saying, are you an executive vice president above working at a company? And we're starting this program. If you would like to be considered, please send us your resume and so forth. And you, yes, you can nominate yourself. It's okay. And so that's how it got started.
Nice.
And, you know, and now the companies all say, well, we want to nominate our executives. So, I mean, you know, you get them from NBC Universal, we get them from Sony, we get them from
I congratulate you.
Thank you. And to lift up those those individuals, because, you know, when they are in the positions to be making decisions
Of who to hire.
Exactly.
Who to put in front of the camera. No?
Or, you know, working with presidents and CEOs and saying, you know, it's in our best interest to do this, or we can make money because this business is all about making money by tapping into this market, and this is where we need to go. That's really critical. To me, it's one hand can't do it without the other. Okay. It's reciprocal. I mean, we're all bound together. It's business. Basically, it's all business. And so, yes, so we're very excited, and we're getting all of our submissions in now.
That's exciting. I know then also there's the Hall of Fame for Latino influentials as well. If you've been probably awarded or recognized 5 times, then you can also qualify for the
right.
So
then
the
we have a Hall of Fame. Yes,
that's another
yes.
signature event.
Yes.
How long has that been taking place?
Well, no, that's part of the influentials.
Okay.
So anyone that's going into the Hall of Fame will be announced that night as well. Okay. So so yes, and so you know, we're excited about that. One thing I do want to mention, and, you know, and it's maybe kind of going off a little bit, but I think it's really important. And that is, when I was working with Norman, I had a chance to go on a diplomatic tour to Israel and Egypt. And it was through the World Affairs Council out of Philadelphia, the National World Affairs Council. And when I went on that trip, there were a lot of very high-profile individuals on there with a lot of money. And then there was me, you know. You know, there was a socioeconomic dynamic going on, you know, and I understood it because I'd been around, you know, I'd been around for a while, and I understood that people of significant means always kind of band together. But I remember one night we were sitting in a Bedouin tent having dinner, you know, on the ground, on pillows and so forth. And several people came up to me and spoke to me either in Hebrew or in Arabic, you know, and I started looking at them, and I realized, I said, you know what? They look like me. Yeah. And I look like them. So to me, that was so empowering, because what it said to me was, we are made to feel different in this country. But when we leave this country, we are not different. No. And so I said to them, you know what? If anything happens while we're on this trip, I'm going to go right into the crowd and blend right in, and you guys are all on your own. And they kind of just looked at me. But it was true. And it was probably one of the most empowering times of my life.
Wow, what an experience.
Because from then on, I didn't feel different. No.
Or less, because you don't make millions.
Exactly.
Okay. You know, and how important that is for audiences, anybody viewing this interview, because sometimes they're like, no, but it's like,
should I say anything or not say anything? The other thing Norman taught me is, one person can make a difference, and you need to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done if you want to affect change. And sometimes it's not very popular, but if you don't do it, who will? So, I mean, I've had great mentors. Going back to the mentors, and feeling people that have empowered you to do what you do. I've been very fortunate. Having said that, I never ever parlayed it into, millions or, I always did it, from the standpoint of an obligation, because I felt that I had been to places and had experiences that other people probably wouldn't ever have had, and that it was my charge to be able to share what I've done and the experiences that I've had.
Thank you so much for sharing this anecdote with me, and because it's inspiring. Would you like to share your thoughts about how everything has evolved, technology-wise, even artificial intelligence?
Oh, right. No. I mean, it's an ongoing evolution. We don't know what next year is going to bring, let alone what this year is bringing. I think we need to stay as a community ahead of the times. I mean, and I think people need to look around. There are people there around you that are touching your life. It could be a parent, it could be an aunt, an uncle, it could be a colleague at work, it could be, and getting and taking in their life experience. Because that life experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody in the entertainment industry, It could be somebody that's just giving you advice. Feel good about who you are. Don't ever let anyone make you feel less than, because you are just as good as anybody else.
Thank you.
And I mean, I can say this again, being one of 12, you can imagine being from a Mexican family of 12 children as a daughter, the oldest daughter. It wasn't an easy task for me, but it made me stronger. And it made
resourceful.
Yes.
Multifaceted, versatile.
I have to tell you something. I have to laugh when you said resourceful. I have so many friends that say to me, "You're so resourceful." It's like, well, when you don't have much, you make do with what you've got and you figure it out. And I think that's what we all have to do, is figure it out.
And that's the reason you're a great executive producer of the Imagen Awards, and you put on all these big events to continue celebrating Latinos behind and in front of the cameras. I want to thank you. Also, one important, as a woman, I know you have a family, you have children.
Oh, yes.
How do you balance life, and how important it is to balance, because you do so much, I guess you travel also everywhere.
Yes.
If you are on boards and everything, I imagine they have you going East Coast, West Coast.
Well, no, I do. But I have to say that I'm able to do that because I have great staff. Okay. I think that's one of the most important things also, is that you can't do it alone. By bringing in people that are competent and qualified, all Latinas in my office, and Yanira Leon, who's, our vice president of operations here. She's been with me now 15 years. It's training and passing it on. Yeah. It's important. No one person can do it alone. It takes a village, and I really, truly believe that. And so I'm very fortunate in that. I have a husband who supports everything that I do.
Who's your cheerleader?
Who's my cheerleader, who was way back in the day my mentor, who always believed in me and never thought I was less than anything. I mean, he was just always, again, as I said, he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. My children have always been there, and they've, I like to say, when it was good and when it was bad. I mean, because it wasn't always easy. I was a single mom for a while with 3 kids. And I did the best I could with 3 children. And then I remarried, and I had a good husband. And he, also supported my work. But I'm happy to say that, my oldest daughter, Michelle, lives in Dallas, Texas, and she's an accountant. And I have 2 grandchildren, Paige and Derek, and they're in their 20s. And my son, Rick, lives in Washington, D.C. Wow. And he and his wife, Meredith, have 3 children. And one of them is graduating from high school this year, so we have
You're
a graduation.
You're a proud grandma, huh?
Oh, I am.
They keep you busy.
And then my youngest daughter lives in Paris, France.
Oh, what does she do for a living?
She's been there 20 years, and she has 2 children, so I have 2 French grandchildren.
Oh, my God.
But... and her husband is wonderful. All of my kids' spouses are good, except we did have one tragedy. My oldest daughter lost her husband 4 years ago. He was a LA City fireman captain, and he contracted lung cancer
Oh, yeah.
because of all the
the fumes
smoke
and
and stuff. So that was the biggest tragedy that we've had to deal with. And when he passed, and she moved to Texas, and,
Yeah.
and my granddaughter was already living there. But they're happy ending.
Wow.
You know, she
Yes.
has someone in her life now, so that's you know, I'm happy for them. But I've been blessed. All
Yes.
3 of my kids have college degrees.
Well, congrats.
My 2 older grandkids have college degrees. You know,
Well,
life is good.
they saw you in action. They saw you pour your heart into everything you do. They might have learned something.
Well, yeah, and you know, I ran for Congress too. I don't know if you saw this, but I'm going to show this. So I
won't go
woke.
back.
I spoke at the Women's March for Choice in 1992,
So cool.
and I was one of the candidates.
They need to
when
do a
I ra-
documentary about you.
Oh yeah.
Seriously. No.
I spoke at that rally, which was 1 million people. I spoke in front of 1 million people. It was like
What years was this?
1992. I couldn't believe it. And Dolores had a lot to do with this. She was the one that
Dolores.
convinced me to throw my hat in the ring.
But that's so cool.
Isn't that? And I was the only
See, these
one.
are good, very good. I mean, people that have impacted your life and are still in your life.
Oh,
And-
yeah. No,
But
yes.
I thank you so much for your time. You're very candid. You're very nice, and I've always known you. I remember I used to submit the Riveras, the reality
right,
show,
right.
when I used to work for NBC Universo, and I would submit.
And we
them.
love Jenny. We miss her.
I know,
Yeah.
I know, and I had the opportunity to work with her 5 children for the
good.
reality for 4 seasons,
Yeah.
the Riveras, and that's when I remember exchanging communication or seeing you here in LA. It was at the Beverly Hilton.
Yeah.
And Jackie and Chiquis were presenters on stage.
Right.
So I would always be grateful to you because you've always been very, very amable, very
Oh, God,
kind to
thank
me.
you. You're welcome.
Anything else you would like to add?
No, this has been great. Thank you very much for reaching out to me. I appreciate it, and happy that you found what I had to say valuable.
No, because every time I see award shows, I think, where are we Latinos? But I know Imagen Awards does an amazing job. So I was like, I'm going to contact the person who actually, because I need to do this academia paper about representation of Latinos in media, in mainstream media, and in film.
By the way, I will say that we're still trying to get it on the air. We've done it locally for PBS, but we're going to keep trying until we can get it on the air. We're not going to give up.
Oh yeah, ABC. You know?
Maybe, who knows?
You know, muy bien. I thank you, Helen. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay,
Dawn.
and I hope to be back in LA
Okay.
and be involved.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.